Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Recently, I received a number of terrain packs from Archon Studio from their recent crowdfunding campaign for Dungeons and Lasers Woodhaven. So in today's video, we're going to open a few of those packs, take a look at some of the terrain options from this particular set of their Dungeons and Lasers series. And I have to say there are some really interesting things in this set. There's some stuff that I'm really excited about. First of all, we have the City Streets set. It says look around for quests. This box contains 36 terrain parts. That means you get 36 terrain elements plus all of the clips necessary to attach them together. And if we look at the back of the box, there are short sidewalks, long sidewalks, L-shaped sidewalks, there are short streets, long streets and corners. There are no walls in this set, but there are enough pieces to be able to make quite a large area of streets, or even like a forecourt or something like that. So here we have the connectors. You get two sets of the connectors in this box, and once you've started picking up a few different sets of the Dungeons and Lasers terrain, you will find you very quickly amass a huge number of these clips. And for those of you who have never seen Dungeons and Lasers stuff being put together, I will show you how those work in a moment. And here we have the frame with the terrain elements. There are 6 unique elements on each frame, and you get 6 of these frames, hence 36 terrain elements in total. I have actually finally got around to playing Bloodborne on the PlayStation, and looking at these tiles, I'm immediately thinking of how you could create something like Yharnam with these. If you play something like Call of Cthulhu, this would be a really good set to create those old cobblestone streets to explore, as well as being good tiles for creating a fantasy city in a Dungeons and Dragons type setting. And very quickly, I'm going to snip some of these elements off of the sprue, and I'm going to show you how they connect together. It's incredibly simple. I have 2 sections here. I have one of the 2x4s and then I have one of the 2x2s. When we flip it over, you can see there are little indents on the reverse of these tiles, and that is where the clips will connect. So you push the clip into one piece, then you push it into the other piece, and that is that. You will notice where 2 pieces meet, there are these little holes, but on the frames of connectors you also get little plugs. You can push those into place, pushing them firmly into the little holes, and that just neatens the whole thing up. It's not necessary. I think a lot of people probably wouldn't bother because it's a bit fiddly to have to do that on every single one, but if you're really intent on getting that perfect finishing look, those plugs are there. And as you can see, while some of the tiles have sidewalks making them perfect for creating city streets and dark alleyways, some of these tiles don't have sidewalks, and they are really good for adding variation to the flooring in different dungeon settings. You could combine these with something like the Dwarven Mines or the Abomination Vaults, just to add variety to your dungeon layouts. And because all of these sets are compatible, you can mix and match as you need to, and you can also create little buildings and attach them to the sides of your city streets, and that's really exciting. Next up we have this little stone town stairs set. This has 4 terrain parts in total, and it's just a little stairway that you can use. It works out that each of the sections is 25mm square, so it's not a very big terrain piece, but if you use 25mm gridded maps, this is going to be a perfect thing for those. And there's just 1 frame in total of the hard plastic pieces. Each component is 2 parts, and there's nothing really on the frame to connect them together. They don't clip together firmly or anything like that. So when I snipped these out of the frame, I did decide to glue them into sections. And that's what we have here. We have the 4 elements glued together, and that's just going to make it a little bit more robust. And there's a number of different ways you can configure these. You can put them side by side to create a 2-wide stairway. And that of course is 25mm tall, and that will be perfect for half-height wall sets like the Dwarven Mine, or you can arrange them so they extend up to 50mm high, and that will be perfect for any Dungeons and Lasers sets you have that use full height walls. We'll be looking at a few of those in a moment. But yeah, this is a neat little staircase. And then next up we have an alternative version of the stone staircase, this time a wooden town staircase. And it's pretty much the same thing, it's in a few more parts, but you are going to create a rickety wooden staircase that has that same configuration. You have the 2 25mm square blocks, and then you have the 2 sets of stairs that you can arrange in different configurations to go 25 or 50mm high, whichever you need it to be. And it has a really nice wood grain finish. It's going to be very easy to paint up. Just a simple overbrush and dry brush, and you can get this to the table incredibly quickly indeed. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but I think something that's always quite useful. And in fact, these little staircases would probably be ideal for adding to a copy of Hero Quest as a proper way to indicate where your heroes have arrived in the dungeon. Next up we have the Tudor Mansion Fantasy Room. It says everybody needs a bit of luxury. You are getting 21 terrain parts in this set, again with the plastic pegs, and this is a really nice looking set. Look at the lovely detailing on the walls there. If we look at the back, you can see we are getting long walls, we're getting floor tiles, short walls, door arches, and we are also getting something called trims. And when I opened this particular box, this was the first time I had seen trims, and from what I can gather, it seems to be a way of creating buildings that have multiple levels. You would actually use the trims to create a second level that sits on top of the first, and then you could connect them with some of those staircases we were just looking at. But I will show you in this video how some of the trims can be used. It's quite an interesting idea, although I don't know how often you would really employ it. But anyway, let's dive into this box and take a look at the frames you are getting. This is of course a smaller set than the city streets, but once again you are getting a set of your connectors and plugs, and then you are getting 3 frames, and there are 7 components on each of the frames. The frames are identical, but you can see you're getting your floors, you're getting your walls, the doors, and then those little trims. And the detailing on these is absolutely lovely. I really like the wooden flooring on these ones. I can see myself using these to create little small houses for things like Rangers of Shadowdeep quite often. And as I mentioned before, you can build a little room with this and you can connect it to that city street set, so your heroes can be walking down the street and then they can turn into a little building. Perhaps they meet the mayor, maybe they meet a wizard, someone who's going to send them off on a little side quest, I'm sure. And here we're just going to look at some of the detailing on the walls a little bit closer. Really, look at that, that's incredibly nice. That does mean these are going to be a little bit more difficult to paint than some of the other sets I've looked at, because you have those panels, you have those arched windows, the different wood textures. There's just a little bit more to do there to get them looking really nice. But I have cut out most of the contents of a sprue here, and then I've taken 2 of the trims. You only get 1 trim on each of the frames, so you only get 3 trims in total, and I would say that's probably not enough to be able to use them in any kind of serious way. But all I'm doing here is I'm going to very quickly attach the walls to the floor, and then we have our trim sections, and you can see the trim sections will sit on the top of the walls. They connect into the bottom of a floor section, like all of the other clips do, but they have a fancy edge on them, and that fancy edge will sit over the top of the walls, and it just sort of rests in place. But that is using 2 trims in order to do that, and then maybe you could have one of those staircases on the side there. I'm just putting a door arch on the top, just to give an idea of how you can start building your city upwards as well as outwards. Like I say, there's not really enough trims in one set to be able to do anything too interesting with it. You kind of need at least 2 for each floor section that connects over the top of a wall. But it's an interesting little feature nonetheless. Next up we have the Royal Castle. It says any princess here, and again you are getting 21 terrain parts. This is pretty much the same format as the Tudor Manor set, so you are getting your frame of connectors, exactly the same as before with the connectors and the plugs, and then you are getting 3 frames of the terrain elements. And exactly like the Tudor Manor frame, you are getting 2 floor sections, 2 short walls, 1 long wall, 1 door arch, and 1 trim on each frame. So that's 7 components over 3 frames, 21 terrain elements in total. And I really like this set because it's really quite a generic looking set. Obviously it does have that castle vibe to it because you have the arches, you have the narrow slits for the archers to fire through, but it is simple stone detailing. So this is something that you can spray black, you can do an overbrush with a really light grey, do a final dry brush with an incredibly light grey, or maybe even a white, and you will have really nice castle terrain. And in case I haven't pointed it out, all of these terrain sets that I've shown you here have the full height walls, so that is different to the Dwarven Mine and the Abomination Vaults, which I've shown on the channel previously, which had half height walls. Having double height walls can make it a little bit more fiddly to reach in and move your miniatures around, but I think ultimately it's going to be down to people's personal preference which aesthetic they prefer, whether they prefer the shorter walls or the taller walls. Regardless, I do think this is a nice set that's going to get a lot of use in a lot of different situations, because you can use it for ruins, castles, towers, dungeons, all sorts of things. And again, being compatible with every other Dungeons and Lasers set really helps to extend the usefulness of each kit you get. And then we have something completely different. We have the lava caverns. It says there are 21 terrain parts on the front of the box for this, but that's not actually correct. I'll show you in a moment that you get less than that. You only get 18 pieces. This again is the same sort of format. It is enough pieces to create a small room, but rather than being a room created by humans, rather than being something hewn from rocks, it is a naturally occurring hazard environment. Something to make your heroes sweat, perhaps the home of a nest of salamanders or a greedy red dragon. But anyway, as you can probably tell from the images on the box, you are not getting standard grey plastic for this particular set. This set is entirely in translucent orange, and that's something interesting about the sets that I've shown you so far. Most of them, because they are just rooms or city streets, you can clip them off the frame and use them without painting them at all, and they're going to look okay. And again, this is something that you could just clip off of the frame and use as is, and it will look thematic enough because of the way it's been produced, but really you're going to want to put some paint on these anyway. I'm not the biggest fan of translucent plastic. It's not something that usually excites me that much. I paint everything anyway, but for people who just want to be able to cut this stuff off of the frame and use it, it's a nice touch. And this isn't the only set that Archon Studio create which is in translucent plastic. They've done a sewer set which has translucent water effects. And I do like the details on the tiles, particularly I like the cavern entrances on these. I love the lava dripping down. I think that looks really evocative. It looks like somewhere you don't really want to explore. But moving on, having said that I'm not a big fan of translucent plastic, I am going to show you another translucent kit that I am a lot more excited about than the lava cavern, and that is this ghost dragon. And this is a really big piece. It's 152mm tall and it sits on a 50mm base. And while I don't have an immediate use for a ghost dragon that I can think of, this is one that I'm really excited to get out of the box, get assembled and get painted. I do have a process for painting translucent ghosts. I have done it on the channel once before. I will probably do it again for this ghost dragon, just to see if that method will work well on this particular miniature. But that's something for another day. No painting in this video today. But as we continue through this video, if there is anything you see that you would like me to paint on the channel, do please leave a comment below. I can do follow-up videos painting the things that have proved popular with everyone. But if we open this box, you can see you get one frame which has the classic grey plastic. That is for the base with the scenic element, and then you have the two frames that make up the dragon. And just look at the wings on this. Those are huge. This is going to be a gigantic dragon when it's assembled. And yeah, I'm not a massive fan of translucent plastic, but I've got to admit, that looks kind of cool. And if you're not a painter, you could just glue this together and it's going to look pretty neat as is anyway. It's going to look like a huge ghostly fiend. And this is the second frame. And look at these tendrils coming off of everything. I really like all of this detail. It really does look like a spectral entity. And while I said before that I don't actually have a use for a ghost dragon right now, just looking at this frame makes me want to come up with a reason to need a ghost dragon. I do like this one a lot. But moving on, we have the Woodhaven Townsfolk Starter Set. This contains 64 miniatures. That is a huge number of miniatures in a single box, and there is a whole host of different stuff in here. Really, really useful NPCs. But also loads of militia and stuff like that. If you are creating a town environment, maybe you have a town that your heroes regularly go back to and you need a whole bunch of NPCs to fill that town, this box is a great start. If we look at the back of the box, we have a gravedigger, a merchant, an innkeeper, a tavern maid, a blacksmith, a peasant woman, a nobleman, a noble lady, a scholar, a male dwarf, a washerwoman, a child with a cape, an elf wizard, a knight lady, a beggar. You get 2 swordsmen D, 2 swordsmen C, 2 swordsmen B, 2 swordsmen A. Swordsman A actually has a halberd, he's a bit confused. But then we have a bunch of mounted guards. You get 2 each of those on their horses, which is great, that's 6 total. You get Armand, you get a dwarf woman, a snake charmer, Tommy the ghost, which appears to be a small child wearing a sheet, a construct, oh I like that one, that's a really nice one. You get a little rat person, a peddler, And then moving down, you get two female swordsman. And then you get 2 of the swordsman F, 2 of the pole guard, 2 of another pole guard, 2 of another pole guard, 2 of another pole guard, possibly a few too many pole guards. There is a lot of militia stuff here. And then there's the female pole guard. Then you get guards with bow and arrows. You get 2 of guard A, 2 of guard B, 2 of guard C, and then guard D and E and F have crossbows instead. That's a whole bunch of stuff. Probably a few too many militia for my liking. I would have liked to have seen a lot more unique characters, but even so, you can't really complain when you're getting 64 hard plastic miniatures in one box like this. And just look at all this stuff. There are so many frames. I will sift through these and I will show you them all individually, because obviously there are some duplicates, because there are certain things like the militia characters you get 2 of. And then at the bottom here you have got 2 frames of scenic bases. I have seen how much scenic bases like this sell for on their own, so even just for these bases alone, this is a really nice box, because all of these scenic bases look different. There's loads of different variety there, and they're really interesting designs. And look, some spectral hands have made their way onto this particular frame. There's just 2 hands there. I don't know what that's all about. But yes, impressed with all those different scenic bases. I wonder if you can get these separately. I don't actually know. I wonder if Archon Studio sell these separately. I think they probably could, and they would probably shift units of them because they're nice. But anyway, you get 2 of this frame. This has a whole bunch of the militia stuff on it, and it has the cavalry. Here's a closer look at that frame. I recently received Archon Studio's Masters of the Universe Battleground game as a birthday gift. I have covered it on the channel recently, and I put those miniatures together and they went together really, really well. They were a little bit fiddly, and there were a few too many parts I felt in some cases. I felt they could have cut them into fewer parts to make it a little bit easier for construction. And looking at these miniatures, I'm getting that same sort of vibe. The detailing is really nice, it's really crisp. And I bet when they go together seamlessly. All of the Masters of the Universe stuff that I've put together has gone together incredibly well. But just perhaps a few too many parts. It can be deceptive figuring out the size of miniatures when they're on the frame like this. I estimated the Masters of the Universe ones were probably 28mm, but they're actually closer to 32mm. I imagine these are probably around the 32mm scale as well once they are assembled. But most of them are on 25mm bases anyway. But you also get 2 of these frames. Again, this is mainly militia. So you have your archers, lots of individual swords and things to stick together. I don't believe you have any options like alternative heads or different weapons. But that's okay. If you want to fill a big town scene, you don't need to worry too much about having alternative poses. Just a lot of bodies on the board is fine. And I really like this guy here who is asleep on his halberd. I think that's a really nice detail. He's having a snooze, he's bored. What you need is a good city invasion to wake him up. Maybe the dragon could do a flyby. You then get this small frame. This small frame just has 2 of the crossbowmen on it. I don't know why they earned their own little sprue like that, but they did. And then you have a frame of your unique characters, so there's only 1 of these frames and only 1 of each of these characters in the box. But again, really nice options, quite a few parts. And then you have this frame, which again has more unique characters. And these frames do look quite daunting when you first get them out of the box. There is a lot of stuff going on them, but I have found the instructions that come with these miniatures from Archon Studio are pretty easy to follow, relatively straightforward. And I think if you take your time, check your parts as you cut them out, you should be fine. And look, there's our little rat. And there is our construct, ready to be assembled to wreak havoc in the city streets. That's a good box of miniatures, a good starting point for any city environment. But I think that's about enough for this video. That's a lot of different boxes of stuff. That's a lot of painting for me in the imminent future. I don't know if I'm going to paint all of this stuff on the channel. I don't know how much interest there is in me working my way through a massive ton of terrain. I know personally painting terrain is not one of my favourite things, so I should imagine it's probably not a lot of people's favourite things to watch either. But as I said before, if there's anything you have seen in this video that you would like me to paint on the channel, do mention it in the comments below. At this point in the video, I do have to say thank you to Archon Studio for sending me these review copies of their Dungeons and Lasers Woodhaven kits. And I also have to point out that many of these kits are also available as add-on purchases in the crowdfunding campaign that Archon Studio are currently running for Dungeons and Lasers Encounters. I have mentioned this crowdfunding campaign in previous videos, but if you have missed me talking about that, let me have 30 seconds of your time now. Dungeons and Lasers Encounters is a range of hard plastic terrain and miniatures from Archon Studio, providing dungeon masters with a quick and easy way to set up a variety of engaging encounters for their unwary heroes. There are 3 terrain packs on offer: Elven Woods, which recreates a wooded area with hills, trees and a campsite; Swamp of Doom, which gives you land masses, piers and a boat to recreate a marshland environment; and the Land of Giants, which comprises mysterious ruins and statues. There is also a set of creature miniatures to help you populate these mysterious new lands. As I record this, the campaign is in the final 48 hours, with over 4,100 backers and 690,000 euros in funding. And there have been some exciting developments. Of particular note is the terrain packs are going to be in mixed colour plastics. That means it's going to be even easier to snip the components off the frames and start using them immediately. Although obviously, if you're a painter, you will still be able to paint them up so they look even better. There have also been many unlocks throughout the campaign, including a dragon, a giant, trees, plants, different structures and a host of creepy critters to keep the heroes on their toes. Anybody who backs at the €99 starter pledge or higher receives all of these stretch goals with their pledge, along with a gigantic Tarrasque miniature which looks like it would be the centerpiece for a truly epic adventure. Oh, and if you want to know what I pledged for myself, I kept it small. It can be very tempting to dive all in on these projects, but I backed at the starter level and I've selected the Swamp of Doom and the Land of Giants packs as they contain elements that I'm likely to use the most when playing games like Rangers of Shadowdeep. The campaign closes on the 28th of June 2022, so if you're seeing this and there's still time, do consider checking out the campaign. You can gain access using the link in the video description below. But that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.